Um, Today we have a really cool session, user experience for AR. This is our brown bag session. So if this is your first time, or maybe you've been to a few but didn't realize they were brown bag sessions, this is where we bring in experts in the field. And it's a non-technical session, so you don't have to have your laptop out or your coding environment up. It's an opportunity for you to kind of listen, ask questions, and hopefully learn and connect. And so today we have Daiga, who is running UX for our teams here at Niantic. And as you know, we've had about 10 years of experience here doing UX for AR. And so we've got a lot to share today. A couple of announcements before we get started. We have another product session coming up around shared AR. Some of you might know this as multiplayer or multi-peer, but essentially the opportunity for multiple people to share in an AR experience. So Ria, our product manager for shared AR, will be hosting that next month. And then we've also got a research opportunity happening right now. So that's in the announcements of Discord. We want to hear from all levels of developers. If you have struggled, if you have succeeded, anything around Lightship, we'd be asking questions. We want to make the product better, and we want to know how to support you. So thanks, Nicole, for dropping that link in. So sign up for the research study so that we can hopefully increase like the engagement around our product and make it easier for you to utilize. And then lastly, we will be kicking off a VPS developer roadshow in the fall, and that's not only Lightship VPS, but also Eighth Wall VPS. So we'll be hitting London, we'll be hitting Seattle, New York, and LA. So we're excited about this. It's a weekend of workshops and a mini challenge. Great opportunity for you to get to know us and each other and get confidently building with our visual positioning system. So lots of good stuff coming the way of the community. And with that, I want to pass it off to Chanel, who can take it from here.
Thank you so much, Haley, for introducing me and also giving all the announcements. I'm really excited to be part of the future coming events. I'm sure we're all going to work really closely together. Just some gentle reminders. Recording is in place, so if you don't want to be recorded, please turn off your cameras, but we would love to see your faces on screen, so that's totally up to you guys. And once Daiga starts presenting, please mute your mics just so no one is distracted. For example, me, I'm going to mute my mic in a bit just because I have construction in the background. And then also, if you do have a question and you want to speak, just use the raise hand feature in Zoom and we'll call on you to speak. Or also, please use the chat box as much as possible. You guys can directly message me if you have anything you guys want to ask me as well. And then there will be a Q&A session at the end. And we, instead of typing it in the chat where we may lose them, we want you to submit them using either the QR code. You can take out your phone and scan this and enter your questions in so you don't forget them during the session when Daiga is presenting. Or you can also visit sli.do and enter the code there. And I will also drop the link in the chat so it's easier for you guys. But yeah, just please, we want to hear questions from you guys. So just submit them using the website that we provided. And the next, I'm really excited to introduce Daiga. He is one of the leading UX designers at Niantic for our Peridot app. It's a new app, and he's going to tell you lots more about it. I'm going to stop screen sharing now, Daiga, so you can take over, and looking forward to the session. Thanks.
All right, well, let me get my slide ready. Okay, this slide. Okay. Cool. I will start sharing my screen. Okay. Can you guys see?
Yep.
Thumbs up.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. So, hi everyone. My name is Daiga. I'm a UX designer here at Niantic. Specifically, I'm working on Peridot. Which is our first like AR first game at Niantic, and it's not out yet, so I'll first kind of start introducing what Peridot is. And yeah, and today I want to share a little bit about some of my learnings, as well as like some things I think about when I do my UX design or UI design for Peridot. Everything I'm gonna say is, mainly based off of Peridot and what I think when it comes to like a, immersive experience. So it's not like a law for all AR, because there's obviously different types of applications for AR. So this is more about, Peridot and that kind of stuff. So I guess, okay, agenda, quick little agenda. I'm not gonna read through it, but we'll have Q&A at the end. So any questions, submit in that chat thing. So, okay, so first, what is Peridot? Peridot is to simply put it, it's a casual mobile game inviting players to rediscover the beauty of the world with a one-of-a-kind fantastical pet by their side. So it's a pet game, kind of like Tamagotchi or Neopets, the Chows in Sonic, stuff like that, but in AR essentially is kind of the goal / like what we're trying to achieve in the game. And then, okay, so a little bit about Peridot, kind of what I said. It's our first AR game. It's essentially an AR pet game where you kind of explore the world while you raise this like one-of-a-kind Peridot. These are kind of on the right, some sample shots that we're made. They are color over, so they're not like accurate images of what you see in game fully, but it's this kind of the kind of game we're making. It's it's a game where you raise these creatures and then you feed them, you play with them in the real world since it's AR, and then in the end you breed them and you get a new creature, and yeah, it's a breeding game essentially. So quick question for you guys. With ARDK features, what are some like features you guys think are like most like crucial to create like a immersive experience for players? Can't see.
Environment detections, I said.
Oh, what was that?
Oh, environment detection.
Environment detection, so like semantic segmentation and stuff. Meshing, yes.
Occlusion.
Occlusion, yeah.
Someone else said mesh
collider.
collider. That's awesome.
Nice.
So differentiating between water, sky, which already Lightship has, but more refined way.
Yeah.
Yes, the VPS. That's the most favorite thing.
That's a good point.
Did anyone say VPS yet?
Yeah, someone just said it. VPS. That's the most
nice.
important thing.
It's me, Diwakar.
Nice.
Realistic shadows. Nice. Yeah. Well, in Peridot, we kind of use a lot of what you guys just said. Unfortunately, not to VPS yet, but yeah, we use the main three features. I really feel like we focus on is like ground plane detection. So getting these Peridots to run around on the ground. We all walk in, or like it can like also like hop on to like the couch you're sitting on, stuff like that. Occlusion, making sure like the creatures occlude behind, if there's like a statue like here or like a person walking by. And then obviously semantic segmentation. We specifically use semantic segmentation kind of to like give almost like intelligence to the creatures. So like it being able to like recognize people, animals, trees, and understanding like the difference between like grass, water, and dirt. So like right here in this little GIF, it's foraging on grass and you get a dandelion, and then if you forage on like water, it gets like a kelp and stuff. So yeah, like these are kind of the ways like our team is creating like an immersive like real world experience with these creatures. So yeah, just, we're also using Lightship ARDK just like you guys. And this kind of like, yeah, our way of, showcasing what Lightship can do as well, this project. And next. So, AR is new technology. It's a new industry, it's a new thing, but UI UX is still like a crucial part of creating a good AR experience. I think it's really easy when it's a new technology to forget that, like, user experience and like user interface is like important. And you can't just have like the creatures running around and that being the whole experience, because then that's just like a demo essentially. So in order to create like a full-on app, or a game for users, you still need to consider what the user experience is and what the user interface is and if it's usable. So first I want to, I think this is, if everyone uses, I'm sure everyone's used like Unity, so this might be like kind of a simple thing, but like obviously there's a difference between screen space UI and world space UI. Screen space UI is things that are like essentially like stuck onto the screen, like these like camera icons or map icons or like the book bag. It's stuck on the screen no matter how you move your screen, it's sticky and it's on the screen. And then world space UI is essentially anything you place in the real world or the 3D space. So like in Peridot's case, it's the creatures, it's like their reactions or emotions, or like the way spots, the POIs, the spots you go, kind of like focus stops and stuff. And for me as a UX designer, how I distinguish like when do I put what like if I have some sort of iconography or like something I want to put, whether it's text or anything, how I distinguish them is like, okay, what is this like asset associated to? Is it associated to the world you're in or like the creature you're in? Then it goes into world space UI. Or is it more associated to the user, you yourself, or like, the users you want to be playing your game or experience? Is it more associated with them and what they are experiencing? So like for example, like the Peridot info, like information about the Peridot, it is about the creature, but it's you reading about the creature. So it should be in screen space UI. If if you have these items like the food and stuff and you're still holding it, the book bag, you're still holding it, therefore it should be in screen space UI. Things like the menu, map, camera too, like those are things that you, the user, is interacting with, not the creature. So at first it should be in screen space. Obviously there are things that go from screen space to world space. For example, like when you're feeding the creature, at first it should be in screen space, you're holding it still. But then when you chuck it at the creature, it should transition from screen space into world space. So these kinds of things are like really important when you are creating an experience so that the user can understand what is going on, what they are doing. And yeah, this is kind of like a little diagram showcasing that for you guys. And how immersiveness can break. So if you look in the right, you don't know what is going on. There's a whole lot going on. This is a screenshot I took from like an old demo that Peridot was making. I don't think it was a real game thing, but it was just like crazy screen I found, so I put it here. So how immersiveness can really break, or how you can, make AR not feel like it's, a extra layer to the real world. Obviously, like not intentionally differentiating the usage of world space UI and screen space UI can like really break your experience. Like, if your creature is stuck on the screen at all times, that's not really realistic. If there's like, just really being intentional is like the best way to, keep the immersiveness going. Another way that I think people forget is that if there's too much going on the screen and users don't know what to focus on, that could also break immersiveness in my opinion. If there's too much going on, like, you know, we're all looking at everything through, you know, in AR right now, at least little phone screen. And if there's too much going on and, you know, there's not a balance between what the real world is and what the additive layer you are creating, then you're actually like, maybe you're creating crazy, amazing, like VFX and like 3D assets, but if there's too much going on and the user doesn't know what specifically they're looking at or what they're supposed to focus on, you're actually doing yourself a like huge like I guess you're really hurting yourself in that you put in all this effort and the user, you know, feels overwhelmed, and that's not really immersive. That's, you know, that's just overwhelming the user. And then another way is like, you know, the need to open and close AR screens too often, that can also break immersiveness. If you're, you know, have an AR screen and some of the gameplay requires you to like check a menu that's like, you know, that turns off AR or camera. And if you have to go back and forth, that like continuous immersive experience is broken every single time you exit. So obviously, you know, we're still working through phone screens, so there is a need. But if you have to do it too much, then that's also a huge disadvantage for you and a threat to the users. And in my opinion, like using too much text in the AR screen also breaks immersiveness. You know, there's still a need to use text, but if you're, you know, putting too much emphasis on text, like it's really hard to read for a user to be walking around or moving around while, you know, holding their phone up. So like, and, you know, in the real world, you don't really see text, you know, floating around and stuff. And obviously it can create a cool effect, but if you're trying to create like a real world experience, like a virtual pet, for example, like in this case, then like you want to kind of avoid using too much text. Obviously, if it's like a tool, then you can obviously use text, but, you know, too much it's hard for the user. So what about like in between screen space and wall space? There's times where you want to like create transitions and stuff, or like you're entering the AR screen. How do we do that? So in Peridot's case, when you start up the game, this Peridot's actually kind of stuck in screen space. It's not placed in the real world yet. And what we're doing is creating like a fake AR effect by doing a motion delay. So like whenever your phone moves, there's like a slight delay for the creature to move with the phone. It's still in screen space, but it looks like it's, you know, it's like floating and it's like, hey, look at me, look at me. And that's how we're kind of doing this whole like letting the phone register the ground plane detection and stuff. Instead of saying like registering with your like scanning your world, instead we're kind of doing this effect where it prompts users to like hold up their phone and look around without saying it. And that's kind of a great way to keep the immersiveness and, you know, keep it feeling real. And yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. It's, you know, localization, you know, the users, although it's helpful for us developers and creators to be like, okay, we want to prompt the users to like know that they're localizing, but they actually don't really care what the technology is doing. They just want it to work. So like saying like localizing and stuff actually is like confusing the users, and instead it should be, you know, kind of on the back end and you suggesting users to do that instead of you literally saying like, hey, we're scanning your world, especially for like immersive experiences like Peridot. Okay, so that's kind of how like Peridot has, you know, done their way of like preparing users for AR. Instead of like saying it, we're just kind of doing this like in between of like, you know, screen space and world space, what are some other ways, you guys think you could like help users, realize like, okay, we're getting into AR instead of being like, oh my God, what is going on? Yeah, tricking people into localizing. Yeah,
I
making
didn't mean to use the word tricking.
yeah, but tricking is exactly what we want to do as developers.
Right.
We
Well,
don't want to like bring forward like there's this hardcore technology working, because users don't actually care about that. They just want the cool thing to work. Yeah.
I have an answer to your question, but I want other people to go before I go.
I've got
Yeah,
something.
onboarding instructions for sure. Like before you get into AR, like I think a good way to, yeah, exactly, is explaining it before you get in, not after you get in. Yes, you can look for something like, hey, try to look for blank is a great way to start to making it like gamified. How to make users not skip the instructions. That is an ongoing question that we all are trying to
So I think
solve. No
I have
matter
like
what it is, AR, VR, mobile, it's a challenge for all of us.
I have, I mean, idea for if you don't want to, I mean, users to, I mean, skip the instruction. If you make the instruction in the 3D so that they can instructionally see the instruction in the real space itself, not in the plane, 2D plane something. If you directly integrate the instruction in the 3D text itself.
Yeah, that could work, but also, when you make it in 3D, you are also making it hard for the users to read. So there definitely is a need to like explore that, but there's definitely a lot of challenges, especially when we're not in HMD yet. Well, there's a lot of answers. These conventions of the games. Yeah, like exactly, like throwing a Pokeball in a natural physical way instead of like pressing buttons and stuff. Yeah, like definitely like having familiar interactions that are in the real world, or something, novelty wise, like Pokemon that everyone knows, and it's a chucking thing. Those are great ways, suggesting things that actually happen in the real world. Yeah.
Yeah, Daiga, I was actually playing the Super Bloom app last Friday, and the way it got you to like scan the environment was like to plant seeds, because you're essentially supposed to like grow flowers, and so it had you kind of like walk around and look at the ground and tap on the screen to be like planting your seeds, and that was how you kind of scan.
Yeah, those are like definitely things. Those are like great ways, and I think those are a lot of like things that Niantic as a company really thinks about, especially like the UX team. Like, like in Pokemon Go, there's like the grass, instead of like a mesh, stuff like that are really great ways. And I like this one that Mark said, is like, instead of presenting the app as an AR app, build a narrative that turns your phone into a magical device. Like that's a great way to think of it. And, I think that's definitely the direction, us AR creators should think about, is, instead of like focusing on the technology, focusing on like what it can provide. There is a lot of different answers, but we have not a whole lot of time. But let's see. Always a cliche on game design, but it's such a good example. Yeah, Mario is definitely a great example. Nintendo does a great job, I think, with like, getting users onboarded. Okay, cool. So, okay, so earlier I talked about how like, you don't really want to use too much text, and you don't want to use too much 2D UI, but there's ways, you can incorporate these and also like retain immersiveness and continue communication with the users. I guess first, instead of like, if you want to communicate something, I think the first thought to do is like, okay, I want like our first thought is like, let's do text, but like I think a good thing to think about is like, I need to use text here, but is there another way to do this? And the first thing you should think about is like, okay, could I do it through like visual language? So like iconography or like, some sort of like emoji or like something visual that could communicate it. Is there a way to do that? Hearts, stuff like that, emotion, things like that. Can you do that first? Could I, another way is like, could I just avoid the text and do it through like animations, for Peridot's example, like your Peridot's unhappy. Could I just make it look unhappy and have like some like visual effects of it being gloomy? Stuff like that is like better than just being like your Peridot is mad at you. Instead of using text, so let's just show it, visually show it. And obviously, like another thing is like haptics and sound design are, still crucial parts of augmented reality, because augmented reality is not just visual, it's audio, it's haptics, and we're still limited to the phone, but there's things you can, do through the phone to like get it feeling real. If you can use the vibration to make it feel like, your Peridot's like bugging you or stuff, like your creature's bugging you. The sound design can help with wayfinding. There's different ways to like, make your experience feel immersive, not just visual. There's touch and sound, and those are two things, even, here, like, I think even like the best designers forget about. Sound design is so important, and there's a lot going on outside of like the the mobile and visual industries. There's companies like Sony and stuff working on like spatial audio and stuff, so there's a lot to explore on that end, and I am currently exploring those ends too. So yeah. And then when you still have to, but you went through those options and you're like, that won't cut it, I need to explain some like game feature or something like that. Pop-ups are a great way because you don't have to close the AR screen, you don't have to pause it, you can just have a gray shadow or a blur effect, and then have the user focus on the pop-up, but they can still kind of see the environment, so it won't get the users to like completely drop their phone on the ground and like break the scans. That's a great way. Another way is, don't be afraid to use cinematics, like cutscenes. Like if you want to, like showcase something that like the users don't want to miss, or like you want to create some sort of like cool visual, action scene or something, it's okay to like get out of AR and do that stuff too, because you don't want the users to miss that like only happen once shots, or like parts. For example, like with us and Peridot, when you like get your egg and there's like the breeding and stuff, there's no sex scene. Just no, there's no sex scene or anything like that, but when there's that whole sequence, we don't want the users to like miss it, or like the ground plane to be lost and then it's like, oh no, the egg disappeared or something. We just use a cutscene because it's an important part of the experience, and we don't need to just be like, oh no, everything has to be in AR, it has to always be in an AR. We can still incorporate these like cutscenes, or like just typical like other mobile game type like scenes, and still make it feel immersive. It's totally fine to utilize those kinds of cinematic scenes. And then non-AR UI pages are still important, like creature stats and stuff. You don't really want to be like seeing the whole environment, your AR, while doing that. In our case, we have this menu screen called journal. So if you're looking in a book, so like it's not AR, you're looking into the book and you're going into the book, and that's how we kind of deal with like player stats or like creature stats or like anything, collection type stuff. That's how we do it. But those kinds of things are things you don't really need to have AR on. So that's how, we do it. And, anything that's like gameplay related, like your creature wants to do A, B, C, we never use 2D non-AR UIs, and instead use like things like pop-ups. Okay, some design philosophy for AR UX. This is my own philosophy. You can have a completely different opinion on this if you want. This is kind of strictly based on my experience with AR, VR, XR, and stuff like that, and my design experience and what I go by when I design stuff. So first thing is like, I always think about is like, why should you use AR for the product, and why is it better to use AR? AR is still just a tool. We want to make it an AR, but if AR is not the best option for your idea, then maybe go to a different idea, or don't use AR for that. It's still a tool, and using AR should always be for the best option. Like, AR is the best option for this problem or this experience, therefore I'm using AR. Always consider that. Just because it's so cool in AR, it's probably not the best for the user. And if we're creating products, we always have to think about the user. And coolness is not enough, in my opinion, to attract users to AR. And second thing is like, safety must always come first. There's always going to be, AR has such safety concerns and safety issues, and even like map-based games like Pokemon Go has safety issues, but always, there might be some consequences, but like, always make sure like safety is thought about whenever you're making a feature or product. It's we're creating products for users, and user safety should always come first. So things Paradox considers is like, we make sure like 90% of the time the creature is on screen and in a position from you where like the users can hold up their phone and they're looking up, like making sure the users are looking up in a comfortable position. So like when you're walking with the creature, we have done so many iterations to make sure the creature distance from you is like at a place where the user is not looking down, but not looking up to the point where their arm hurts, and stuff like that are things to always consider. Keeping the immersiveness, if the immersiveness breaks, then like there's no point in it being AR, in my opinion. So like, everything I talked about from before, like keeping that immersiveness is always important when designing for AR. And then the last point is like, we're creating new experiences, but don't forget to make it familiar. Like, always push the boundaries. This AR, VR, it's a whole new industry, and like the UX rules of like mobile phone apps or social apps don't fully apply to AR because the experience is so different. So we always have to be pushing and creating new experiences, pushing the boundaries, but also still not making it too extreme, like too much to like the final destination that we're all trying to achieve, but trying to like keep an equal balance between what you think the users would know. So like references to like social media apps or like iPhone interfaces, interactions, or things that users already know how to do, but also like not sticking fully to those laws and rules, and pushing the boundary little by little is my philosophy in trying to do AR UX. So things like a full-on world space UI, everything is in world space, is probably not the best experience for the user because they're not familiar with that yet. But keeping certain things in screen space, like the menu, using 2D UI, stuff like that are ways like I'm trying to keep balance but still pushing the boundaries. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of the end to my presentation. Q&A now. How are we doing this, Chanel?
Chanel, you might be on mute.
Yes, I am. Thank you. I forgot I have to like bring this down. Yes, so we have a few questions that enter and I'll read them off to you. So Victor, if you want to elaborate on your question, but his first question is, could you talk about diegetic and non-diegetic UI in AR?
I'm sorry, just when I asked the question, you answer it talking about the word AI and like the overlayer UI. So you already answered it. Thanks.
Nice. Yeah, great.
Awesome. I think Victor had another question too. As the
Yeah.
performance and heating of the device can hurt the immersion of the experience, how does UX design, like how can it help solve the issue with AR?
How UX designers can help with that. Pressuring the engine and the developers and Lightship to make sure they solve that, because that is a huge part of user experience. Battery drainage, heating, those are like two crucial ways where users like, I don't want to play this.
Yeah.
So, like there's not too much, UX can do, except for making sure the experience, like it's designing experiences to make sure it's like short but continuous, right? Like, so like you play it, you put it in your pocket, you play it, you put it in your pocket. That kind of like short experiences are definitely like better, good ways to like balance out between like the development of the technology. If you're creating like a full-on RPG that requires you to like have your phone out at all times, like your phone is gonna like literally explode, that's probably that's a great idea, but like that's probably like you probably need to wait a little bit until the technology catches up, stuff like that, keeping that balance between that great idea and what we can do, and balancing out like the users, how would the user feel in this situation. I think keeping those three balanced is like honestly the only way right now, sadly.
Oh, thank you. Just making a little parallel, thinking about what you just say about the making like small but continuous experiences with AR. It's very similar to the Game Boy at the beginning. Like the batteries would run out like very quick with big games. So they made like this tiny little game that you just can play like 10 minutes and put it out, 10 minutes and put it out. So
I
maybe
see. I actually didn't know that's why they made the small screen, but yeah, that's exactly.
Oh no, sorry, I didn't mean that like the small screen, but the tiny experiences inside, like the games were not like meant to be like this big journey. Well,
Yeah.
some of them did, but they were not meant to be like that because of the technology restrictions at the time. So it's interesting to see that like technology repeats itself like all the time.
Yeah, exactly. I think a good example that's like not AR is like Pikmin Bloom. That's a game where you don't have to have it out all the time, and that team did a really good job in that feature of like making sure it's a game that users check every day, but they don't have to have it open every day. That kind of stuff is, and that's a huge inspiration for me when I design.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Victor. And then the next question, I think it was from Ken. You mentioned that too much opening and closing the AR space can create a bad experience. You have a target duration for interactions. And Ken, if you want to elaborate, feel free to do so.
So that was good.
Okay.
Target duration.
I mean, if that question is clear, I mean, I can clarify if necessary.
I think, how I do it is like, how I think about it is like anything that's related to the gameplay itself, like what quests you have to do, or like what you're looking for and stuff. I try to make sure that I don't do it in a 2D UI. I guess the balance is like anything that's related to like, I guess like, Niantic's mission is always to like get users to walk around and stuff, and AR usually is like that too. So like most AR is like that too. So like anything that's like associated with like moving around, I try to avoid too much 2D, and then strictly have like 2D UI for more things like, if the user's sitting down at home, they can like be checking stuff that kind of interaction. I try to do that in 2D, but obviously there's certain things that you can't avoid, like opening up a map. Like there's no way to kind of have a map and AR open at the same time. Oh my God, your phone will literally blow up if you do that. So stuff like that. There's certain things you can't avoid, but yeah, I guess, I don't have a balance because it's kind of more like instinct right now. Like I also, I don't know if there's a number, but try to, I would say like try to make sure, if there's an option to not do it in 2D UI, then try it. But obviously if everything is, there's like literally no 2D UI, then it's gonna overheat your phone and stuff too. So yeah, still something I'm exploring.
Cool, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for your question, Ken. Another question, when people in the project have different opinions on how to implement an UI function, how do you decide what to do? And whoever said that, you can let me know who submitted that as well.
That's a great question. I think, when you're on a team, there's always this like hard balance between game design and UX design. There's a lot of cross-functional things that are like associated between the two, but there's obviously different strengths in both that, I don't have the ability to make like, game mechanics, like strong game mechanics or like interesting like metrics and, level design and stuff. But I guess, usually, we take in everyone's opinion. We, the leads are always, the second most important outside of me, and the game designer is always all important too. But usually, I try to explore like if there's two great opinions, I usually design both, and we don't implement them, but do like a user flow or like a UI flow of both. So I don't just always stick to one idea. I always stick to like two. If someone has a great idea, I mock that up too, and we compare and contrast and decide that way. That's kind of how I do it. So like, I guess as a UX designer, what I do is like make sure I take in everyone's opinions, and if there's a great idea, and even if I don't agree with it, I still make that flow still.
That's a
kind
great
of how I
answer.
balance it, is like, just because you're the UX designer does not mean you should like be like, no, we're not doing that before you even like try it,
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you so much, Daiga. And then the next question is, what should we need to know regarding accessibility for AR experiences? Asking you the hard questions
that's
today.
a really hard question because it's augmented reality, right? So like it's adding a layer to a real world, and visual impairment and stuff is really difficult to solve in AR. I mean, I guess like, things like haptics and sound, like I guess like incorporating all, visual, auditory, touch, all three is like a great way to do that. I think sadly, right now it's still like we're still not even sure how to make the best experience for non-impaired people. So it's really hard because you can't, like, without a defined thing yet for even like the most like, function, not the functional is not the right word, but like the like, like a person that, can walk with no disability. It's really hard to translate that experience into a experience that's best for, people with disabilities. So definitely like keeping it in mind, but knowing like there's still, there's still ways to go. And I think that shouldn't stop us from exploring different options. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a full answer to that. It's definitely hard. I guess like a good way is like, like eventually maybe creating games where, there's an AR option, but also a non-AR option would be like, amazing to do.
Mhm.
But that's very hard, so, it would be cool for, Peridot to be able to be played on like desktop or like just non-AR too, but we'll see.
Yeah, I want to like piggyback off that. Whenever I think of like diversity and inclusion, I think one of a good way to be inclusive is invite people to get their feedback. It's hard for us to put ourselves in the shoes of others, but if we can get someone who may be like visually impaired or has some other kind of disability and getting their feedback, that's really invaluable. So if you can, get someone on your panel, on your team to have that perspective, it's nice.
And like it's kind of going back to what I said earlier of like overwhelmingness, like obviously like not making AR to this like crazy thing is also a way to make it accessible, like
True.
obviously if it's already too much for a normal person, like an everyday like regular person, then like it's probably too much for someone with it's definitely way too much for like someone with like epilepsy or something. So I mean, like making the AR still very friendly for everyone, if it's already overwhelming, then it's not accessible is like kind of like a good benchmark too, I think.
Yeah, thank you for that. And we have 3 more questions left, but we may be running out of time. So I'm going to let you choose the last question, Taika. The last 3 questions. Which one do you want to answer?
Where's the
the last 3? Or can you see?
yeah.
Okay, yeah, one of the last 3.
I can answer the sound and haptics one because that's something I'm like working on. So Sony is working on these things called link buds, and they were at Lightship Summit too, and what they are doing is using VPS and sound, and essentially they're placing objects in through VPS, but not like visual objects. It's like things that emit sound. So that's another way of using AR, is using spatial audio is making things come from different directions, different distances, figuring out how to do that is what Sony is doing. And I think that's like very inspiring to me because I was like, I didn't even realize you could do that first. And yeah, haptics, I mean, there's a limit to what the phone can do, but adding haptics to any kind of interaction that and trying to sync that haptic with what's going on in the game is pretty important, I think. But yeah, definitely like sound design, there's like so much more to be explored. And I don't think many experiences include it yet, but like I know like Apple is exploring that with their headsets and headphones and stuff. But more than like music, like I think like with AR, like getting close to something that something could happen, or like stuff like that is a great way to make immersive experiences feel even more immersive.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And sorry we can't get into the last questions, but to wrap this up, wanted to kind of bring it back to the audience. You guys have great ideas, and kind of end with this quote by a famous designer and humanist technologist, John Maeda. Design used to be the seasoning you would sprinkle on for taste. Now it's a flour you need at the start of your recipe. And I'm just curious about your takeaways. How are you guys going to start using UX and UI in your design? So you guys have any ideas right now, or did you guys have any main takeaways from Daiga's presentation? Feel free to unmute yourself and share.
File size, I think, is really important in delivering AR experiences. If you can get everything, under 4 megabytes in Snapchat, then it looks really good and it loads well. That's a design choice on my end.
That's a good one. Thank you, Mitch. Anyone else have great ideas from today's?
A big takeaway for me, and thank you for the presentation. Big takeaway is the transition between screen space and world space. I think that's a really interesting concept and something I'd like to explore further, ways to trick without tricking people into scanning the environment and participating with the 3D experience on a deeper level.
Yeah, thank you. I think Daiga's examples, especially using Peridot, were really key to help understand the concepts and kind of solidify the importance of that. Thank you so much, TVS. Awesome. Anyone else want to share one last thing before we wrap up? Oh, Eric wrote auto-visually balancing interaction and experience with limitations to device battery and thermals. Wow, that's a lot of words. Very true. I don't think I considered a lot of the hardware issues until today's session. So thank you for that. So thank you guys for all attending today. Please join us for our upcoming events. In 2 weeks, we're going to have a product session on shared AR multiplayer features. You can RSVP at events.lightship.dev. We'll post an announcement as well in the Discord channel later on. Please sign up for our research study. It's a paid opportunity. You'll get a $30 Amazon gift card. The link is in Discord. And also we will be accepting applications for the VPS developer show soon. So please look out for that announcement. If you have any questions, feel free to stay on or message us in Discord. But thank you so much, Daiga. Thank you everyone for attending. And we'll see you guys in 2 weeks at the product session.
Woohoo!